Marvel really dropped a show about a C-list Avenger who wants to be an actor and somehow made it one of their most charming projects in years? Yeah, we gotta talk about Wonder Man, spoiler free. Here I thought I'd written off Marvel as anything more than just, hey, I'm bored right now, so let me throw something on that's kind of mindless. But this was not what I was expecting. Now, full transparency, I don't know the comic of Wonder Man like that, like at all really. From what I gather, Wonder Man, aka Simon Williams, first showed up in Avengers in 1964, originally a villain, fights the Avengers, dies, gets reborn, joins them later, some classic Marvel drama, villain becomes hero kind of stuff. Okay, cool. But the show, the show takes that and says, what if we started somewhere completely different? Look, I'm a sucker for off the beaten path Marvel. Give me the weirdness of WandaVision or the bureaucratic chaos of Loki any day. I love it when the MCU stops trying to build a bridge to the big next villain, even though that is kind of what Loki kind of was doing. But in the way in which it was doing it just tells me a weird, like, different story, just a different way of approach, a different perspective. And there happens to be powers going on as well. Instead of, hey, I always wanted to be a hero and blah, 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 we get it. In this one, we get, I always wanted to be an actor. And that right there, that's where the series won me over. So Simon, aka Wonder Man, has been in LA for a decade, trying to make it as an actor. And he's talented, but he overthinks everything. He's the guy who turns a two-line role into a philosophical thesis about the human condition. Directors hate that. We all hate that. All right? So even when he lands a role, he loses them because he can't keep his mouth shut. But he loved the Wonder Man character from basically a movie series that's in the Wonder Man show. So he's loved it his whole life since he was a kid. So when a major superhero film starts casting for that role, Simon jumps at the opportunity and nothing's getting in his way. And that's where things get interesting because this isn't just about powers. It's about identity, ego, art, acceptance, Hollywood, and what it means to play a hero before you kind of become one, I guess, in a way. He's not a hero who happens to act. The way they have it set up, he's an actor who happens to get caught up in a superhero origin. It's such a refreshing pivot, in my opinion, from the I was born to lead trope, right? So Simon's ambition isn't to join the Avengers, it's to land apart. It's to get his career off the ground. It's to pay his bills. And that just, it's easy to relate to that. This was such a smart pivot point for people like me too, who don't really know, it didn't grow up attached to Wonder Man. This approach, made him accessible, right? Instead of throwing us into a cosmic lore and background overload, they ground him in something very real. His insecurity. Simon isn't chasing heroism, he's chasing validation. That's way more relatable than anything else. He's just a guy trying to figure out who he is while accidentally stepping into something even bigger. And that's the fresh part. Let's get into the humor of the show. It's pretty sharp, I'd say. It's fun, it's light. It kind of makes sense too, like as things happen. I didn't feel like it was ever cheesy in any one moment or another. If there were any like cheesy moments, there probably were, but they kind of just went over my head because everything else was blended together so nicely, so seamlessly. It's not, constant quip every 20 seconds. It feels more situational, more natural. It's awkward. It's got industry satire. Like it works. Watching Simon argue about a character's motivation while a production crew is just waiting for him to hit his mark, that's funny. Watching Hollywood try to manufacture authenticity, also funny and very meta. So all that to say, it doesn't just yell jokes at you. You're watching it unfold very naturally. And that tone keeps the show light without making it unserious. So kudos to the writers for pulling that off because that was done brilliantly. Now let's talk about the relationship between Simon and Trevor. Trevor is the Mandarin. If you've seen him before, then you know. If you haven't, it's okay. The show does enough to explain who he is without really going into the full background of that. So regardless, it works. These two, they're the heart of the show. It felt very honest, not dramatic for drama's sake, not bro speech about destiny, though there is one guy that kind of talks about that. I won't ruin anything about who it is. Ultimately, it's just two guys navigating auditions, ego, and loyalty. Their conversations land. They feel great. They feel genuine. The sweetness of that relationship, I think, carries the show perfectly to the end. That grounds everything. There are kind of these things that are very much missing, I think, in modern Marvel these days. I find they're too busy trying to do other things, kind of losing a lot of the art. Um, Not because they have like an overabundance of CG. I just feel like a lot of the human aspect, the human factor in there, has been stripped out of modern Marvel, and stuff like Wonder Man with this has both the production value and the art and the heart. So it just works so much better. Now, obviously, we got to talk about the race swapping because it's happened again. And here's what I find interesting though, it barely matters. I had to even Google it just to see if people had been angry about it, because I honestly just I didn't see any of it. I didn't see anybody actually talking about it. It wasn't like Helen of Troy. That stuff with Lupita, that stuff like has permeated my algorithm. It's all over the place. I'm still kind of seeing it. But because of how good I think this story is and how much it works, the characters were well developed, the performances were strong, and their writing is solid, and the world feels lived in. People don't care, I think, nearly as much as they think they do when you have such a good story and good characters. And I think season one proves something very simple. If it's good, it's good. And audiences respond to that before anything else. Now, one of the things that might be a personal thing for me, I love movies about making movies. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Babylon, the behind the scenes chaos, the ego, the delusion, the dreams of grandeur. I eat that shit up. Maybe it's the filmmaker side of me. Maybe it's just fun seeing the machine exposed. I don't know. But watching Wonder Man blend the superhero myth with like the Hollywood setting, that was right in my alley. I feel it felt like Marvel experimenting again. You know what I mean? Taking a chance, taking a risk. And when Marvel experiments, I mean, when any big IP can experiment, maybe take a risk or two, that's when things get interesting. Now, here's where I might lose some people though. I don't think this needs a second season. Like, I think they're working on one when I took a brief look. I don't think it's necessary. I like this as a contained story, because what happens next? He fully becomes a superhero. Maybe like the next one, it's him embracing his superhero existence or whatever. Like, that could be cool. That has an opportunity. He's still famous, but he's a superhero. It might be, depending on if people know his identity or not. But does it just turn into like a standard superhero movie or show? Maybe a villain of the week, or maybe one major villain at the end. I don't know. But like, I feel like unless they have something clever planned up, which who knows, they might. Keeping it as is, I think, just tells such a more brilliant story from beginning to end without needing to really wonder. Let your imagination wonder about what Wonder Man is doing after. But as this isolated piece within the Marvel Universe, it's super strong. It has identity. It doesn't just feel like they're setting up 5 other projects. It just feels like what it needs to be, which is super refreshing. But we'll see what happens. I mean, Wonder Man works because it doesn't try to be loud, I think. It doesn't try to be epic. I guess that's the better way of saying it. It doesn't try to be like too granular. It tells a focused story about identity, about ego, the friendship that he's having and or missing in the show, and like just his overall ambitions. And that happens to be wrapped in like a superhero-esque aesthetic. So Yaya, who plays Wonder Man, he carries it really, really well. The humor lands, the relationships are good, and for black nerds especially, it's cool seeing a character like this exist without the revolving trauma or struggle. I'd say like he just kind of like, he obviously has his own background, his own past, and his own struggles, but he's sort of just a dude, with a dream of being an artist, and it's cool to kind of see that take over. Um, he's flawed, he's ambitious, he's funny, he's messy. He's just a person with powers, and that was enough. Like, comment, subscribe, share this out, and until next time, what's the best recent film you've seen?